Hey, you caught me putting some stuff on. I'm sorry. I was meant to be here I've actually started trying to get on here, 10, 15 minutes ago, and I was trying to do live in both Synergessence and here in Revolutionary Aromatherapy. And for some reason, Facebook it's been weird today. So fortunately, I'm live here, and I'm just going to have to post it. So those of you who watch in the Synergessence, on the Synergessence page, I'm very sorry. I will just make sure that, see if I can figure out what the heck was going on. Maybe it's Mercury retrograde. I don't know. Anyway, I have the filter on today because it's yet another gray day, and at least these filters add a little bit of light, whereas I was just kind of like this whitewash. So now that that's all out of the way, thank you very much for being here. I wanted to talk today. The question I had on that I wanted to discuss was something that was asked me last week, and so I appreciate your patience with me last week for not doing the live. I actually ended up with, not only were we going away, I ended up with food poisoning, so it was just a disaster of a day. But the question I was asked is, how does the person know if they need essential oils? Now, for those of you who are watching this, my guess is already very interested in oils, so that probably seems like maybe a question that I don't know how that lands with you, but I actually thought it was a great question, because the way we go about oils at this point, there's a couple of ways. Number one is we typically look at it as a fragrance or a palliative care, which that there's nothing wrong with that. And or we will go and use them if there's a condition that we're concerned about, and that we want to deal with in that moment. So kind of symptom relief, if you will, which is palliative care. And at the same time, it's after something has set up. So I was listening to, I was sitting in an entrepreneurial class just recently, and somebody actually said that people aren't interested in prevention. They don't buy prevention. And I get that. I can completely wrap my head around that. If you don't seek out relationship coaching unless your relationship is struggling. So I do understand that oftentimes it's a symptom that takes us into wanting to do something more. That's really how I ended up here at Revolutionary Aromatherapy, was because I had been practicing more along the lines of palliative care, wanting to do more healthcare related, preventive type approaches. And at the same time, we live in a world that really catapults us into health issues. And while there's a number of us that walk around the planet that don't even realize that we're facing some degree of inflammation, so therefore they're not looking to do anything, but they're intrigued by it nonetheless. And that's how this question came to my attention the other day, because this person knows that I put oils on throughout the day. When I get up in the morning, maybe while I'm writing and I'm feeling kind of ungrounded, definitely after I shower and get dressed for the day, and again before I go to bed. So there's a number of points in my day that I'm using oils. And so that question really kind of set me up for like, wow, what do you do with somebody that is going about their day and what appears to be or seems to be a perfectly normal life, right? There's nothing, there's nothing that stands out. And part of the problem with that is the fact that we've normalized symptoms, okay? And what I mean by that is, the recent blog post, I put it in my archive blog, The Ultimate Guide. You can still access it online, synergessence.com/ultimate guide. And it's titled This is Love. And it's based on my newsletter theme, but I promised this month would be sexual health. Sexual health and heart health go hand in hand. And but in that I talk a lot about our mind and our emotions and how much that is involved in our current health situations. But the fact is that we tend to normalize things, like I said. So ED, for instance, thinking back on this post, men talk about it all the time. It's something that happens when we get older. Unfortunately, there's a lot of young men having, issues with it right now as well. Other factors that we tend to normalize would be the declination of our sense of smell. If you just think about all of the stories related to aging and how, well, this is what to expect when you get older, and this is what to expect when you get older, that is a normalization of symptoms. The loss of smell, or our loss of our sense of smell, is not age-related, nor should it be considered okay or normal. Although it's common, I'm not going to say that it's not common. I don't think we should qualify it as normal. And so when I was speaking with this gentleman, I was trying to come up, and it's interesting because I just don't want to go well for again, because prevention isn't the strong suit for most of us. We wait for something to pop up. So I didn't answer him right away. How do you know if you need oils? Well, my best answer is if there's any degree of discomfort. If you're experiencing discomfort, then you definitely want to get into oils. But then my next response to him was, do you live on planet Earth? Because if you live on planet Earth, you need oils. Because oils are signaling molecules, and they communicate to the DNA. Certain constituents communicate to the DNA via the acetylation and the phosphorylation pathways. They help to modify genetic expression so that we can reduce the amount of oxidative stress being produced. They stimulate anti-inflammatory activities as well as contain their own anti-inflammatory properties. So and again, we don't even realize that we're living with inflammation. In this gentleman's case, because I'd spent a couple of days with him, and it came up that, well, first of all, he's had prostate cancer. I think he's okay right now. But I think he's had his surgery, and then he's had he's had another round of radiation treatment for it. He has actually lost his sense of smell. And to top it all off, he has indigestion. Again, we normalize things like indigestion. So many people have it. You can go to the store and buy over-the-counter products for it, that we just tend to just think it's just part of life. Okay? That statement that this is part of life is your indication that you could use essential oils. Again, because of the properties. They are not nutrients. They do not act like nutrients in the body. Nutrients are, in fact, cofactors. Essential oils, authentic essential oils, are signaling molecules. There's a big difference. The signaling molecules tell the cells what cofactors to use. This is why pairing oils with nutrition is supreme. And so that would be the reason why you would want to use them. Because you live on planet Earth, and whether you're experiencing a new symptom or something that's just part of life, you would do well to include oils. Now, and most people would want to go for the ones that are calming. That's usually the ones that we go for. If you have sleep issues, again, it's a question that astounds me. It leaves me in awe, because it really shows me how we think of them, or we're not sure about them, is another way to put it. So to underscore all of that, I would say that, just to kind of repeat myself, we need essential oils as long as we're alive and breathing. And for any factor in our life that we write off as that's just a part of life, you want to begin to use oils. And if you want to know what oils I suggest at that level, obviously, if you're familiar with me, I'm going to tell you it depends on what your system really is going through. Personalization is necessary. At the same time, begin with ones that support the digestive system. Things like turmeric and ginger root, black pepper, just thinking, ginger root, black pepper, turmeric, and rosemary. Rosemary, verbone. Those would be the 4 that I would start with. If you're gonna, and then again, if you're taking a central nervous system and depressant, do not use the rosemary. Just go with the other 3. Or you could actually, instead of the rosemary, you could use a marjoram sweet. That would be beneficial as well. So a combination of 4 of those, either the rosemary or the marjoram, or just switch them out. Rosemary, marjoram, that kind of thing, as you know, because mixing it up is always a good idea. So that's what I wanted to say about that. There is one other thing I wanted to mention that I didn't think of until recently. In fact, it was because I was writing this post on oxytocin and sexual health, because it's related. So feel free to go over there. Join my email list if you haven't already. There's a link to it in there, as well as, well, I'll get to that announcement in a minute. But so what came up for me is that clary sage was one of the oils that I recommended for sexual health, and I go into explaining why in that post. But what's interesting is because it really has a heavy influence on the hormonal system, and it's good for both men and women. And one of the properties of the oil itself is the fact that it can eliminate or reduce hot flashes. So I love it. I actually have loved clary sage for years because of the way I feel. It always is very, very calming to my system, because it is actually very good for the parasympathetic nervous system. So I always found it to be exactly what I needed. In spite of, it's had a strong aroma, but in spite of that, I mean, I actually found myself really enjoying it. Yet every time I put it on, my ears would start ringing. I would have serious tinnitus. And I kept thinking, okay, this has got to be a sign that this is not for me. Now, here's where it gets interesting, you guys. Extraordinarily interesting. So, as most of you, well, some of you know, and some of you may not know, but now you will. In 2019, in November of 2019, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And subsequently, because of insurance, they only focused on the cancer on the right side, although there were suspicious areas on the left. They left that alone. They didn't even mention anything that had come up in the MRI until after my surgery. I wish they would have, because I would have gone for a double mastectomy, period. Nevertheless, it's water under the bridge, and it's been the catalyst for doing a lot of what I do right now. Actually, it's been a catalyst for most of what I do right now. Anyway, so, and then what made it even worse was that some of the cancer was left in the right breast, because there was, that was the lab test that came back, that there was some remaining in the anterior margin. Nevertheless, they put me on medication, and I did radiation. What's interesting, to get to all of that, besides, that minor complaint there, is that the medication they have me on gives me tinnitus. So that makes me think that there's components in that clary sage that are doing the very same thing that this medication is doing. You better believe I'm going to dig into this, because if that's the case, wow, we have good fortune on our hands. That's all I'm going to say. But I will say more about that later. But just know that I am on the trail of that one, because it's interesting that I have the very same experience physically with a medication that I did with an oil. And of course, I don't use the clary sage now because of this medication, because of the similarities of side effects. I do not want to duplicate that, so I avoid clary sage. So yeah, that's what I'm looking into. So stay tuned for that. And then the announcement is that I have been I'm having a lot of fun. Contacting old colleagues, my original mentor, biochemist, organic chemist, the man who is the reason why I am and what I do today, and as well as other people that I've worked with and have shared the stage with throughout the years, and ones I've met along the way. What I'm getting at is world-renowned aromatherapists and scientists. I've been getting in touch with them to begin putting together virtual events where we're going to have one-on-one conversations, and I'm going to host them live here in this group, so you'll have access to that. So be looking for that. If there's questions that you want to bring to the table, I will let you know who's going to be coming in and when, so that maybe we can get some questions of yours passed on to them, and maybe they can answer them while we are live. So that's the really exciting thing. I have just been, I was nervous as heck to even go out and do that, and none of these will take place before the middle of March. I can assure you of that, because I've got to get things organized, and I'm actually getting ready to go back into New Mexico, which I am just really, really excited about. We're getting land. We're going to build a house out there. It's very exciting. So yeah, it's all coming together, but I wanted you to be the first to know that this is what's happening. It's beginning in about a month. I'm talking about people like Mindy Green and Kurt Schnaubelt, Dr. Wink out of Germany, Mark Webb out of Australia, and more. So this is really very exciting news, and I can hardly wait to share these people with you, because they're masters. They're masters, and I am in awe of the fact that I get to be their host. Anyway, you guys have a great week. Next week, I'm going to talk about short-term and long-term effects of oils and why it's important to know that difference. Okay? Anyway, you guys, thank you so much. I will talk to you very soon.